A surgeon's rage is never hot. It is precise. When my son publicly demanded space, I surgically cut the $11,000 life support system on his family's fraudulent lifestyle and waited for the glorious total collapse to begin. Before continuing, write where you are from or what time it is. I was arguing with a foreman named Hank inside a cold, echoing tile warehouse. The air smelled of curing concrete and something dusty and expensive. My focus was on a flimsy invoice for $15,000, the deposit on the hand-painted Italian marble for the pool I was paying for. Their pool. The structural integrity on this coping is questionable, Hank, I said, my voice quiet but precise. If you install this, it will fissure in the first frost cycle. I won't sign it. My phone buzzed once in my purse. I held up one hand, a tiny gesture of authority Hank clearly resented, and pulled out the phone. I expected a medical foundation alert or a reminder from my investment manager, Mr. Thorne. Instead, the screen showed the family group chat. A new message from my son, Nathan Sterling. Mom, we love you, but you're just everywhere all the time. We're tired of seeing you everywhere. Give us a break. The foreman's angry reply faded into a muffled hum. I stared at the words. Everywhere. Suffocating. I was everywhere because I was trying to stop this very foreman from swindling Nathan out of $15,000 for a luxury that would crack within a year. Before the immediate sting could even register, a second notification flashed beneath Nathan's text. A small, blue digital victory flag. Bianca Sterling liked this message. Bianca, my daughter-in-law, didn't just agree in private. She publicly endorsed the humiliation. A gleeful, triumphant digital high five in the family chat. It was the final pathology report. The diagnosis was definitive, malignant. I took a breath that was cold and deep, the kind that clears the mind before a critical incision. I was Dr. Vera Sterling, a retired pediatric cardiac surgeon. For 40 years, my job was about precision, not emotion. When I saw infection, I cut it out. I folded the $15,000 invoice cleanly in half and handed it back to a bewildered Hank. I'm sorry, Hank, I said, my voice perfectly level. The clients have just informed me of a significant change. I will not be signing this. The order is canceled, effective immediately. Hank's face, already ruddy, flushed angry red. Canceled? Dr. Sterling, this is a custom order. The contract states a 30% restocking fee. That's $4,500. You can't just... The fee, along with all outstanding invoices, should be sent directly to the homeowners. I cut him off. I pulled my own heavy gold pen from my purse and wrote Nathan and Bianca's address on the back of his business card. Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Sterling. They are the clients. I am no longer financially associated with this project. Good day, Hank. I left him standing there, sputtering, the implications of my sudden exit dawning on him like a slow, painful bruise. The whale was swimming away. I got into my quiet 10-year-old 7 Series sedan, real German engineering, not a leased status symbol, and sat in the silence of the dusty parking lot. The operation wasn't complete. I picked up my phone. I typed my reply into the group chat. Got it. I'll give you all the space you need. I hit send. Then the call started. My first was to Mr. Thorne, my private banker. Arthur, I said, skipping the pleasantries, it's Vera Sterling. I need you to activate Protocol Cinder. Now. There was a half-second of stunned silence. Protocol Cinder was the code word for a total, immediate financial severance. Understood, Dr. Sterling, Mr. Thorne replied, his voice instantly sharp and businesslike. Stopping all transfers from the Nathan Sterling Lifestyle Trust. The $4,500 mortgage payment, the $3,000 tuition payment to Crestwood Academy, the $1,300 monthly stipend, all of it. Effective today. Confirm the 2 supplementary American Express Platinum cards issued to Nathan and Bianca, I said, my voice cold. Canceled, Dr. Sterling. Revoked privileges. They will decline at the next attempt. The first arteries were clamped. My second call was to Crestwood Academy, the elite school my grandchildren, Maya and Leo, attended. I informed the headmaster, a man whose salary my endowment helped fund, that the $3,000 monthly tuition payments were permanently ending. The purr in his voice vanished into pure administrative panic. My third call was to the Land Rover dealership. I had the VIN numbers memorized. I am officially terminating both leases early, as per the buyout clause, I stated. The substantial multi-thousand-dollar early termination penalty is acceptable. Please send the final invoices to me. And schedule a tow truck to pick up both vehicles from the residence tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. sharp. The salesman stammered. Both. But Dr. Sterling, those are beautiful, top of the line. They requested space. I delivered the final clean surgical cut. I am simply ensuring they have the maximum possible independent space to enjoy their new life. The phone was buzzing in my purse before I even started the engine. It wasn't a hum. It was a rapid, desperate dance. The arteries were clamped. The $11,000 life support system was irrevocably switched off. I drove toward my quiet, elegant penthouse. I did not check my messages. I knew they were panicking, but they still thought this was a misunderstanding, a negotiation. I opened my mahogany front door. The cool, quiet air of my sanctuary hit me. I had excised the malignancy, but I had underestimated the speed of their fear. The panic was already outrunning the consequences. I had just set my briefcase down when I heard it. A frantic, repeated, demanding hammering on the reinforced steel of my front door. They found me already. The frantic drumming on the steel door felt less like an appeal and more like an attempted breach. My heart rate, which I monitored with the detached precision of a machine, remained steady. Panic belonged to them. I checked my watch. Exactly 10 minutes had passed since my last call. They were moving fast, fueled by pure reptilian fear. I walked to the door and opened it just enough to let the light from my quiet, art-filled foyer spill into the hallway. They were a disaster. Bianca's expensive, perfect makeup was streaked with real tears, tears of rage and terror. Nathan looked like he had aged 10 years in the last 10 hours, his expensive suit rumpled and stained. "Mom, stop!" Nathan cried, his voice cracking. He lunged past me, collapsing onto the antique bench by the wall. It was a joke, a stupid, cruel joke. Bianca was stressed. "The pool guy, the money, just turn it back on." Bianca, the queen of the brand, was on my priceless Persian rug, clutching my hand with a cold, desperate grip. "Althea, please, we love you. We need you. We can't live like this. The school called me. They're going to kick out Maya and Leo. My children." "Your children will be fine," I said, my voice utterly flat. I retreated slightly, moving to the edge of my quiet library, where I stood with my arms crossed. They will learn the difference between a want and a need. A lesson you, clearly, have not. "You cut us off," Nathan wailed, his voice rising to an hysterical, childish pitch. "The $11,000 a month. You just stopped it. You can't legally do this. You co-signed the house." "Yes, I co-signed the house, which makes me legally liable," I corrected him calmly. "And now, to protect my asset from your predictable ruin, you will sell it immediately. You will use the proceeds, my original proceeds, to pay off the pool contractor, Hank, for his $4,500 restocking fee, the multi-thousand-dollar car termination penalties, and your accumulated, self-inflicted, unsecured credit card debt. You will move into the 2-bedroom, 200 SQFT condominium I own downtown. rent-free for 1 year. After that, you pay fair market rent. Bianca shot up from the floor, her tears evaporating into pure theatrical rage. Sell the house? That house is my brand. It's 7,000 Duris QFT. We can't afford that tiny, cramped apartment. You are trying to destroy us. I'm giving you space, Bianca, I said, nodding toward the messy marble coping on my foyer table. The space to grow up. The allowance you knew is gone forever. This is non-negotiable. Nathan's desperation turned to a panicked defiance. No, I won't sign the sale papers. You co-signed, so you're liable. You have to keep paying the $4,500 mortgage or risk your credit, Mother. We'll force your hand. I spoke to a lawyer friend. You can't just stop. That friend is correct, I conceded, letting a small crack of tactical clarity show. I must prevent foreclosure. But my lawyer is far better than your friend. The terms I have dictated are the only alternative to financial destitution and the permanent removal of my financial support, including my promise to pay for Maya and Leo's college education. Bianca's eyes were frantic, flicking between the quiet steel in my gaze and the ruined man in her husband. She knew she had lost. The brand was dissolving into debt and dirty tears. She stepped forward, her voice dropping to a dangerous low pitch, entirely devoid of artifice. You think you're so smart, Althea? A doctor? A surgeon? You think you're so precise? You don't think for a second that I haven't been planning for this? You've been watching us for 5 years, but we've been watching you. Nathan's face changed at her words. He looked pale, but resolute. He reached inside his expensive, rumpled suit jacket. We are adults, Mother, he said, pulling out a manila envelope. The paper was crisp, the ink fresh, and as adults who wish to handle things on their own, we have filed our own papers. He slid the manila envelope across the smooth, polished surface of my antique reading table. It stopped precisely at the edge of the lamp base, a line drawn in the sand. I didn't even need to open it to know what it was. You cut off our housing and our credit, Nathan said, his voice dangerously low, mimicking Bianca's cold fury. We filed a temporary restraining order against your ability to sell the McMansion. You have to keep paying that $4,500 monthly mortgage, Mother. You risk your credit if you don't. He had used my co-signing against me. It was a flimsy legal gambit, but it bought them time, and it guaranteed the $4,500 monthly bleed. And just to ensure you stay put, he continued, a pathetic echo of his wife's ambition, we filed a motion to freeze any assets linked to the condo you want us to move into. You can't kick us out until a judge rules. My jaw locked. They were fighting back, using my own weakness, my legal tether to the house, as a weapon. This wasn't just panic anymore. This was a tactical counterattack, poorly executed, but viciously intended. My quiet home suddenly felt invaded, not just by their presence, but by the legal consequence they had just manufactured. I looked down at the manila envelope, then up at my son. His eyes were wide, but there was a flicker of something new, a desperate, ugly pride that he had finally defied me. The sight of that cheap, desperate legal move was my first small on-page defeat. It ensured the $4,500 bleed would continue. Nathan slides a plain manila envelope across my table. We filed first, Mother. The manila envelope felt slick and cheap under my fingers. The TRO they had filed wasn't strong, but it was legally expensive. It meant I was stuck paying the $4,500 mortgage for an indefinite period, trapped in the co-signer tether until a judge could review the case. You've bought yourselves time, Nathan, I conceded, my voice flat, my professional integrity forcing the acknowledgement, and cost yourselves a fortune in legal fees you cannot afford. We'll figure it out, Bianca spat. You have plenty of money, Althea. This is a lesson in boundaries. You want control? We'll fight you for it. We have a brand to maintain." She walked out, Nathan scrambling after her. I didn't follow. I immediately called my attorney, Mr. Vance. "Vera, a TRO on a shared deed is desperate, not dangerous," Mr. Vance assured me. "But it drags us into court. We'll file a motion to expedite, but you must continue paying the $4,500 monthly mortgage until the stay is lifted." The continued financial bleed was galling, but predictable. I had anticipated they would fight the house sale. I had not anticipated they would use my investment condo as leverage. But the real threat wasn't the lawsuit. It was the social contamination Bianca had promised. I spent the next 48 hours in the clean, quiet solitude of my penthouse, managing the damage control. Mr. Thorne confirmed the tow truck had seized the 2 Land Rovers from the McMansion at 10 a.m. sharp. The image of the tow driver hooking up those status symbols brought a cold, surgical satisfaction. The phone, however, began to hum with a different kind of noise. It wasn't the frantic calls of Nathan and Bianca anymore. It was social static. An email from the Crestwood Academy board arrived, highly formal and discreetly concerned. "Dr. Sterling, we have been made aware of certain online posts alleging family disputes that may compromise your ability to continue as a capital campaign donor. We must ensure the children's stability." Bianca had gone public. I opened her Instagram. The grid was still perfectly curated, but the latest post was a filtered, tearful selfie, framed by the perfect soft light of her bedroom. Holding on to hope during this unprecedented family trauma. Pray for us as we face elder manipulation and financial control that threatens to tear our children's lives apart. Generational wealth isn't just money, it's kindness. I wish I had known that before. The comments were a chorus of mindless support. "You are so brave. Don't let that toxic old money control your beautiful family." She was using the emotional language of her brand to assassinate my reputation. She had turned the knife into a public spectacle. This was the social rung of escalation. Bianca was attacking the very foundation of my legacy, my charitable foundation, and my standing with Crestwood Academy. I dressed in my most precise, tailored suit and drove not to the courthouse, but to the country club. I had been a member for decades, a silent, respected pillar. Bianca was due to attend a charity luncheon there. I walked straight past the front desk, my heels clicking on the imported marble, not the hand-painted Italian kind, but a cheaper domestic grade. I found Bianca in the sunlit foyer, talking to 2 prominent, well-meaning women from the community. She was in a pristine white silk dress, a picture of fragile, wronged motherhood. "Oh, Althea," Bianca exclaimed, forcing a high, sweet, saccharine smile. "What a surprise! I was just telling Mrs. Albright and Mrs. Chen about the stress we're under." "The stress of financial responsibility?" I asked, my voice cutting through her performance. "Yes, that can be taxing." Mrs. Albright, the head of the club's charity committee, looked uncomfortable. "Vera, we saw the post. Are you all right? It sounds very distressing. We worry about these kinds of situations in older, distinguished families." Bianca seized the opportunity. "She's just controlling Mrs. Albright. She won't let Nathan and me run our lives. She is literally trying to force us out of our 7,000 SQFT home and into some tiny, cramped condo just because she resents my success." I didn't argue the point. I didn't defend my retirement. I looked directly at Mrs. Chen, who was a close friend and fellow hospital board member. "Bianca is absolutely right," I stated clearly. "I'm controlling the situation. I am forcing the sale of the house I co-signed, and I have stopped the $11,000 monthly flow of funds that paid for those Land Rovers and the $3,000 school tuition. I did this immediately after my son, Nathan, publicly declared that my presence was suffocating, and Bianca liked the message. I made a financial decision based on a clear statement of intent. I paused, letting the clinical clarity of the facts hang in the air. Now, I continued addressing Mrs. Albright directly. If there is any question about my mental fitness or my commitment to this community, I would remind you that the only thing separating this community from a major embezzlement scandal involving Hank, the pool contractor, is my diligence. He was trying to charge Nathan $40,000 extra for cheaper, slippery tile, which I caught. My competence is not elder manipulation. It is simply competence. The shock on Bianca's face was total. I had flipped the narrative from frail victim to sharp protector. The two women exchanged a significant look, nodding slowly. They knew my reputation. They knew the caliber of the work I did. I smiled, a small, cold, social smile. Now, Bianca, about the TRO on the condo. My lawyer is meeting me later. I suggest you tell yours to stand down before you incur more crippling debt for a filing you cannot win. I turned to leave, victorious on the social front. But as I passed the reception desk, the young club manager leaned in. "Dr. Sterling?" he whispered, a tremor in his voice. "A neighbor from the McMansion called. They said police came by earlier this afternoon for a welfare check. Mrs. Sterling was very dramatic with the officers." My blood ran cold. Bianca hadn't just used social media. She had raised the stakes to public safety, claiming I was unstable enough to require a welfare check, a clear attempt to use law enforcement as a weapon. My lawyer looks up, quiet. "The bank called. They found a complication with the co-signed mortgage." The complication was more than a nuisance. It was a strategically placed landmine. My lawyer, Mr. Vance, looked tired. "It's a nasty little clause, Vera. When Nathan and Bianca refinanced 2 years ago, the cash-out refinance they never told you about, they didn't remove your co-signature. But they added a rider that grants them a temporary equity lock if the co-signer's financial health is questioned during a dispute. It's flimsy, designed for hostile divorce, but the bank's legal team is nervous about the publicity Bianca created. The practical consequence? Not only was I legally required to continue paying the $4,500 monthly mortgage to protect my credit and the asset itself, but the court hearing for the TRO on the condo had just been delayed by 2 full weeks. "They're not aiming to win, Vera," Mr. Vance sighed. "They're aiming to bleed you, and buy time to find a new lender or sell some assets." "They have no assets to sell that aren't insured by me," I stated. "The art, the fine furniture. Robert and I maintain tight insurance riders and serial numbers. I am paying the $4,500 bleed, but I will not endure the delay." The $4,500 was a direct financial defeat. It was the price of Nathan's weakness and my initial mistake in co-signing. I felt a tightening in my chest, the surgical equivalent of a persistent, localized hemorrhage. I decided to stop fighting fire with legal fire and start fighting it with surgical intelligence. I needed to move beyond the shallow water of the lawsuit and attack the core of Bianca's fraud. I reached out to my surgical network, not for a reference, but for information. I spoke to a former hospital administrator, now a specialist in corporate fraud due to the number of insurance scams he'd foiled. I gave him the name of Bianca's influencer brand consulting business. "I need a diagnosis, Andrew," I told him. "Is this a legitimate business in distress, or is it a vanity project designed for tax fraud?" Andrew's report came back within 3 hours. Diagnosis: complete insolvency. This business costs roughly $40,000 a year more than it brings in. They are expensing designer clothes, lavish vacations, and those Land Rovers as marketing assets. It is entirely fraudulent, Vera. A digital vanity project. This intelligence was the new scalpel. Bianca hadn't just mismanaged money, she had manufactured a false identity for tax purposes. This was not a family fight. It was a criminal exposure. Emboldened, I focused on the pool, the original inciting incident. I had the $4,500 restocking fee hanging over their heads, but I needed more. I received a cryptic message on an encrypted channel I had set up with Hank, the foreman who had lost his $15,000 tile sale. Hank knew he'd been cheated by his own client, Bianca, but he also knew I was the only one who could get his initial labor costs paid. The message contained a single, grainy, close-up photo. It showed a section of the plumbing beneath the half-dug pool site. It was cheap, residential-grade PVC pipe, not the high-capacity commercial-grade plumbing specified in the $250,000 contract. The accompanying text from Hank was brief. They had me bury the cheaper stuff, told me to use the $40,000 difference to cut them a check under the table for consulting. I refused. Bianca hadn't just asked Hank to substitute the tile. She had attempted to create a straight-up construction kickback fraud, using my $250,000 gift to fund her fake brand, while knowingly installing faulty infrastructure that would fail and flood their equipment shed in under 2 years. The $40,000 difference in materials was the hidden evidence. My hands did not shake. This was the moment of surgical intervention. The fraud diagnosis was complete. I immediately forwarded the photo, Hank's statement, and Andrew's corporate fraud report to Mr. Vance. "This is not a civil dispute anymore, Vera," Mr. Vance said, his voice now alight with professional excitement. "This is a clear violation of municipal building code and potentially wire fraud. We need to send this to the city permits and inspection office right now." The legal leverage had just flipped completely. Their flimsy TRO on the condo was now meaningless next to a full-scale building code investigation. I authorized Mr. Vance to send the package of evidence. I sat back, the faint thrum of the city outside my window a contrast to the roaring silence inside my head. The $4,500 payment was still scheduled, but I now had a permanent, legal, unassailable means of coercion. Minutes later, my dedicated phone line rang. It was the chief building inspector for the city. "Dr. Sterling, we have reviewed the documents," the inspector said, his voice grim. "The immediate consequence is a full stop work order. We are putting a legal padlock on that pool site within the hour. No one goes near it until a full materials audit is complete. If what you've provided is accurate." He paused. "That pool site is now a pending criminal investigation." The criminal investigation landed at the McMansion faster than a tow truck. The police returned, not for a welfare check, but to serve the stop work order and to examine the plumbing. The muddy, half-dug hole in the backyard, once a symbol of Bianca's boundless ambition, was now officially a crime scene. Bianca's social media posts abruptly ceased. Her terror was now directed not at my checkbook, but at the looming threat of legitimate legal exposure. The $4,500 mortgage payment hit my account, and I reluctantly transferred it to the bank. The financial defeat still stung, but it was now a temporary strategic maneuver. I had the legal sword. They still had the flimsy shield, but Bianca, the master manipulator, understood that the law could be fought with lawyers, but a mother's heart could only be fought with children. The next morning, I received a series of frantic, pleading texts from Nathan, not in the group chat, but to my private number. "Mother, please. Maya and Leo. Crestwood Academy just sent their expulsion notice. They are heartbroken. They can't see their friends. They keep asking why the cars are gone." I was at my desk, reviewing the documentation for the petition for temporary custody my lawyer had prepared. I had to use the custody petition to force Nathan's hand, but I hated the cold, calculated move of involving the children. It was the only way to secure their future outside their parents' fraudulent life. An hour later, my doorman, Miguel, buzzed my apartment. His voice was tense. "Dr. Sterling, your son and daughter-in-law are here, but they have the children with them, and they are crying, ma'am, loudly." I felt the familiar surgical ice in my veins, but it was mixed with a sudden hot flush of maternal dread. This was the ambush. Bianca had brought Maya and Leo, my beloved grandchildren, to my sanctuary to weaponize their heartbreak in a public space. I descended to the lobby. The scene was perfectly, maliciously staged. Nathan sat on one of the lobby's plush velvet benches, his head bowed. Bianca stood over him, looking the picture of controlled distress, clearly aware of the staff and the other residents coming and going. Maya, 10, and Leo, my own 8, were nestled against Nathan, their faces stained with real painful tears. "Grandmother," Maya cried, rushing toward me. "Why can't we go to school? Leo says he can't see his friend Ethan." Leo hid behind his sister, whispering, "Are we poor now, Grandma?" The directness of the question, the visible, authentic pain of the children, was the sharpest, most debilitating hit. My flaw, my failure to protect them from the consequences of their parents' folly, was now standing right in front of me, sobbing. "This is what you wanted, Althea," Bianca hissed, stepping forward. Her voice was just loud enough for the lobby witnesses. "You have destroyed their lives. You have ruined their childhoods. They have no school, no friends, no home. And all because we asked for some space." I looked past her, directly at Nathan. He was watching me, his eyes pleading for me to buckle, to give in to the emotional blackmail. I did not move toward the children. I focused on the one person who still had a choice. "Nathan," I said, my voice cutting and low, "the legal documents are ready. I have secured Maya and Leo's long-term education funds, but they will only be activated if you agree to the sale of the house and the terms of the new agreement." I pulled a single piece of paper from my clutch, the petition for temporary custody. It was only a threat, but the word custody held the weight of a firing squad. "This is the only alternative, Nathan. I will not have my grandchildren raised by parents facing criminal fraud investigation, or by a father who would coach his children to cry on demand for a financial handout." I handed the paper to him. He looked down at the title, "Petition for Temporary Guardianship." Bianca lunged for the paper, her composure shattering. "No, you will not touch my children. I will kill you before you take my—" Nathan pushed her away. A sudden, surprising, definitive shove. He was breathing hard, staring at the custody paper, then at Bianca's distorted, frantic face. He saw the cold, mercenary monster she had become. He saw the paper I had offered, the clean exit, the promise of his children's stability. His face went pale, a genuine gray of terror, not of self-pity. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. He finally saw the game they were playing. The gallery director role? It was never a donation, Mother. It was a debt. The debt. That single word hung in the air of the elegant lobby, heavier than the plush velvet and imported marble. Nathan's fear was no longer about the mortgage or the Land Rovers. It was the terror of a man cornered by something truly dangerous. Bianca scrambled back, her anger momentarily replaced by a calculating, panicked silence. "What debt, Nathan?" I asked, my voice demanding precision. "Your father and I gave a modest endowment to secure that director position. It was a gift." Nathan shook his head, the truth spilling out in a panicked, breathless rush. "It wasn't a gift. 3 years ago, I made a terrible investment, a startup that vanished. I needed $350,000 immediately to cover a margin call. Dad, he couldn't put his name on a loan, not with his judicial position, but he quietly brokered a deal. He didn't use the bank. He used a private investor, Mr. Solon. I felt the blood drain from my face. Robert, my late husband, the federal judge, the man of unwavering integrity, had made a secret deal. A dark, high-risk, high-interest arrangement to cover our son's foolish debt. The gallery director role, Nathan continued, gripping the custody petition I had handed him, is not a job. It's an elaborate payment plan. Solon owns a stake in the gallery. The salary is barely enough to cover the interest. The board position, it's his surveillance. The initial endowment was just the cover story. Solon demanded the payments continue, or he'd expose the whole thing, which would ruin Dad's reputation, even post-mortem. My vision tunneled. The parasite was not just Bianca. It was a system of codependence and secrecy engineered by the two men I had loved. My entire life of surgical precision and financial transparency was a lie, built on Robert's final, desperate attempt to protect his weak son. "And now, Mother," Nathan whispered, "with Protocol Cinder, the money is gone." Solon called. He said if I miss the next payment in 2 days, he'll take the collateral. "What collateral?" I demanded. Bianca's eyes snapped up. "The gallery. He'll take the gallery. We'll be ruined." Nathan just stared at me, defeated. "No. The collateral is signed over, Mother. The house is already ours. Solon has a secondary lien on the McMansion deed, buried deep in the refinancing papers. He can't foreclose, but he can block any sale until he's repaid. And with your funds cut off, he knows I'm trapped. This was the true, deep-seated infection. The initial $4,500 mortgage bleed was nothing. The McMansion, my only legal way to recoup my losses and move them to the condo, was now legally encumbered by a shady investor. I had secured a TRO against them, and they had secured a high-interest lien against me. I dismissed them with a cold wave of my hand, keeping the children close to my side. "Take the children to the condo, today. Get them out of that McMansion. I will deal with the collateral." Bianca protested, but Nathan, now facing a far greater threat than my anger, was pliable. "Come on, Bianca. We're leaving. Now." Cut to the next day. I dressed in simple, intimidating black and drove to the address Nathan had given me for Mr. Solon. It wasn't an office building. It was the back room of a high-end, unmarked art brokerage. I found Mr. Solon, a man with cold, unreadable eyes and an expensive suit, sitting behind a simple steel desk. "Dr. Sterling?" he greeted me, a polite shark. I was expecting Nathan. "He's behind on his payment. I'm seizing the collateral tomorrow." "I am Nathan's financial proxy," I stated, my voice clinical. "I diagnosed the problem. The problem is you, and the risk you pose to my family. Your late husband made this agreement. High risk, high reward. It's all perfectly legal. I take the house, you lose your leverage. Simple business." He smiled, showing no teeth. "It's a nasty little lien, buried in the refinancing papers. He gave me that power himself." "The legal tether is severed," I said, placing the fraud reports and the building inspector's stop work order on his desk. "The house is currently a crime scene, under investigation for construction fraud involving the pool, $40,000 in kickbacks, and multiple building code violations. The city has put a padlock on the property. If you try to seize the title, you will inherit a criminal investigation, a public nuisance lawsuit from the city, and the cost of remediation, which I estimate to be in the hundreds of thousands. Your lien means nothing while the city owns the access." Solon's smile vanished. His face went flat. He had been expecting a tearful mother, not a surgeon armed with municipal law and criminal exposure. "You're bluffing." "I'm a woman of systems," I retorted. "My lawyer is currently filing a motion for civil recovery against Bianca's business for the fraudulent use of my funds, This motion will name the McMansion as the asset used in the commission of the fraud. Your lien is now attached to a contaminated asset. Pay me the amount of the debt, or deal with the city, the courts, and the public fraud investigation of a tacky Instagram personality. I only need a few more days. He stared at the documents, at the stark, ugly truth of Bianca's amateur fraud. The house, his valuable collateral, was now legally radioactive. Solon's eyes narrowed. He was a professional. He saw the new angle. He saw that I was now the bigger, cleaner predator. You have 2 days, doctor. The payment is due Friday at 5 p.m. Pay me, and the lien is released. Don't, and I inherit your mess. I stood, gathering my papers. I only need 48 hours to perform the final procedure, Mr. Solon. I walked toward the door, leaving him staring at the legal mess he was about to inherit. I had bought time, but the financial strain was enormous. I had to sell something, liquidate an asset, to pay off Robert's hidden debt. But as I reached the door, Solon's voice cut the silence, a quiet, chilling afterthought. The collateral is signed over, Dr. Sterling. The house is already ours. The $350,000 debt to Mr. Solon became the new target. It wasn't Bianca's entitlement anymore. It was Robert's legacy and Nathan's safety. I executed 2 quick trades in my investment portfolio, liquidating a small position I had hoped to pass on to the children, the true cost of their father's secret shame. Nathan and Bianca were already at the tiny downtown condo, a place Bianca had once called a closet fit for a retired librarian. The move had stripped them of their final defense, the illusion of wealth. But Bianca was not defeated. She was simply redirecting her rage. This time, she aimed for the public rung of the escalation ladder. My annual hospital charity gala, the biggest fundraising event of the year, was that Saturday. I was the co-chair, and my reputation was inextricably linked to the foundation's integrity. It was the perfect stage. I spent the day before the gala at the hospital, reviewing the final details for the auction, when I received a frantic call from a fellow board member, Mrs. Albright, the same woman I'd spoken to at the country club. "Vera, you need to see this," Mrs. Albright gasped. "Bianca just posted a live video. She is outside the gala venue right now, right in front of the banner with your name on it." I immediately pulled up the live stream. Bianca, surprisingly dressed in a dramatic, cheap-looking ball gown, stood with Nathan beside her. She had a small, poorly made sign that read, "Justice for Maya and Leo." Her voice, magnified by a small, cheap speaker, was loud and theatrical. "They call this charity." Bianca wept into the camera, pointing directly at the hospital logo. "But how can you support a foundation run by a woman who is trying to evict her own grandchildren? Dr. Vera Sterling is not a surgeon. She's a criminal. She embezzled $350,000 from her late husband's estate and is trying to bankrupt her own son to cover it up. She is abusing her elderly position and destroying our lives. This is all a cover-up for multi-million-dollar charity fraud." The accusation hit the public forum. My reputation, my life's work, was under attack. This was the consequence of the McMansion fight leaking into the real world. Bianca was twisting the Solon debt into an embezzlement accusation against me. I hung up, my hands locking into fists. This was not about money anymore. This was a professional assassination attempt. I drove straight to the gala venue. I didn't waste time on a lawyer. This required a direct surgical counter-confrontation on her stage. I arrived an hour before the guests. I marched through the deserted ballroom, my eyes fixed on the entrance. Bianca and Nathan were still outside, surrounded by a dozen or so of Bianca's online followers who had come for the free drama. I pushed open the heavy oak doors and strode right toward them. Bianca, I stated, my voice cold, the sound of my name stopping her mid-sentence. She turned, her face a mask of triumphant glee. Oh, look, the villain arrives. Come to confess, Althea? I've come to provide the diagnostic, I replied, stepping close. My tailor-made suit contrasted sharply with her cheap satin. This is not a charity protest, Bianca. This is a pathetic, desperate attempt to publicly blackmail me into paying your debt. I turned, addressing her small, bewildered audience and the live camera. This woman is facing a criminal investigation by the city for construction fraud related to the pool I was paying for. She took $40,000 in kickbacks for cheap materials, endangering her own children's safety. Her husband, Nathan, is indebted to a shady investor for $350,000, a debt I am currently paying to prevent him from inheriting a contaminated asset. I looked back at Bianca, who was now trembling. My $350,000 payment to Mr. Solon is a family rescue operation, not embezzlement. And if you do not leave this property immediately, I will press charges against you for harassment, defamation, and obstruction of a city investigation. Your brand will be permanently disabled, not by my money, but by an actual police report. Bianca's eyes darted nervously between my cold, steady gaze and Nathan's defeated face. Nathan finally cracked. Bianca, stop, he whispered, pulling her arm. The police are coming. Stop now. She tore her arm away, her face contorting with rage. No, I won't stop. You chose the wrong enemy, Althea. You chose... A black car pulled up. A uniformed police officer stepped out, followed by the gala organizer. The organizer, seeing Bianca's messy spectacle, marched up to her. Mrs. Sterling, you are off this property immediately. The police are here. You are damaging the reputation of a real charity event. Bianca stumbled backward, her followers backing away. Her final public attack had been extinguished not by my money, but by the weight of my reputation and the clarity of the facts I had deployed. I watched them drive away, Bianca screaming at Nathan in the car. The street was quiet again. I had won the public battle, but the war was still raging in my home. I walked into the quiet, opulent ballroom, the scent of fresh flowers filling the air. It was a victory, but a bitter one. I turn on the news. Bianca Sterling's tearful face is on the screen, claiming to be the victim of a multi-million-dollar charity embezzlement cover-up. Bianca's public accusation, the televised, tearful claim of embezzlement, failed to gain traction with the city's elite, but it did force the foundation board to call an emergency meeting. I was prepared. I presented the facts to the board with the same clinical precision I used to deliver a biopsy report. I detailed the $350,000 debt to Mr. Solon, the nature of the lien, and the clear evidence of Bianca's construction fraud attempt. I even showed them the video of her absurd public protest outside the venue. This is not an issue of my fitness, I concluded. This is an issue of extortion and a calculated attempt to use my public standing as leverage against a family financial dispute. I have secured the $350,000 payment and the lien is released. The crisis is contained. The board, full of my peers, other surgeons, judges, and respected community leaders, voted unanimously to issue a statement in my defense. Bianca's public shame was officially documented. The public rung of the escalation ladder was secured. But Bianca, now stripped of her social leverage, her Land Rovers, her McMansion, and her credibility, was pushed to a final, desperate, illegal maneuver. Nathan and Bianca were still living in the condo, waiting for the judge to lift the TRO on the McMansion sale. The atmosphere was a silent, suffocating war zone. Nathan, defeated and ashamed, had started talking to me privately, away from Bianca. "Mother, I can't live like this," he confessed, his voice heavy with self-loathing. Bianca has been selling off her clothes, trying to get cash. She's obsessed with proving you did something illegal with the trust funds. She thinks there's a secret. There is no secret, Nathan, I said firmly. There is only the consequence of your choices. She thinks you hid the grandchildren's college fund in a lockbox, he whispered. She's been trying to figure out where your most valuable documents are kept. I did not flinch. Robert and I had always kept a set of contingency plans. The real college trust, a massive, untouchable fund, was a digital entity managed by a Swiss bank, secured by multi-factor authentication. But I did have a physical security box in the penthouse, containing things like rare deeds and first edition book purchase receipts. I had been keeping the one physical key, a single silver key, on a hidden hook in my library, secured by a complex mechanical lock I had installed myself, a quiet, old money precaution. I checked the lock. It was intact. That evening, I returned from a foundation meeting. My penthouse was quiet, the way I liked it. I poured a glass of scotch, walked into my library, and checked the hidden key hook. The lock was exactly as I had left it, but the small silver key was gone. My pulse spiked. The surgical ice that usually coated my veins broke. This was a physical breach. She hadn't just sued me. She had broken into my personal security. I didn't call the police. That would create the chaos Bianca wanted. I called Nathan, my voice razor sharp. Nathan, the condo, now, get up here. He arrived 10 minutes later, breathless, his eyes wide with fear. Bianca was not with him. Mother, what is it? Where is the silver key, Nathan? I demanded, pointing to the empty hook, the one to the security box in the utility room. He stared at the hook, then back at me, his face turning pale. I don't know. I swear, I haven't been here. Bianca has the key, I stated. She must have used the spare key you kept from years ago when you lived here, or picked the old mechanical lock. She believes the grandchildren's untraceable college fund is a physical certificate hidden in that box. Tell me where she is going. Nathan crumbled. The public humiliation, the legal fear, the constant pressure. It was too much. She went to the bank, to the private vault. She made me sign a document weeks ago. It was a one-time access form to my father's old vault. She thought the box was stored there, off-site, safe from your lawyer. He had signed a document giving her access to Robert's private vault. The final betrayal was not just his weakness, but his willingness to help Bianca loot his dead father's security. I looked at him with cold, surgical finality. The love I had held for him, the misguided desire to protect him, finally severed. I walked into the living room, Nathan sitting pale beside Bianca. I looked down at the mahogany coffee table. There, resting precisely in the center, glinting under the chandelier light, was the single silver key. I had not noticed it when I first came in. Bianca had been here. She had broken the security, opened the box, realized it was empty, and left the evidence of her failure right where I would see it. She wanted me to know she had won the access, even if the prize was a bust. I picked up the key. It was cold. A single silver key rests on the coffee table. The key to my penthouse security box. The silver key felt like a shard of ice in my palm. Bianca had been in my home, violating my space and attempting to steal what she believed was the last piece of leverage. The sight of the key, abandoned on the coffee table, was her final, contemptuous declaration of war. She was here, I stated, my voice devoid of emotion. She used the key. What did she take? Nathan, trembling, looked at the key and then at the door Bianca had just used. She took nothing, I think. She said there was only a file of old receipts and a ridiculous-looking paper. She was furious. The ridiculous-looking paper was the final signed trust document for Maya and Leo's true college fund. I corrected him. It was a digital account, Nathan, secured by Mr. Thorne. I only kept a physical copy in that box. She gained access to a piece of paper, nothing more. I finally saw the game they were playing. The custody petition, the financial cutoff, the sullen debt. All of it was irrelevant now. Nathan had finally chosen. His father's betrayal, his wife's theft. It had been too much. "Mother," Nathan whispered, tears falling onto his expensive trousers, "I am so sorry. For the text, for the lien, for the key. I am weak. I let her do all of it. Please, just save the children. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll go to the condo. I'll leave the city. I'll do anything." I looked at him, not with pity, but with the diagnostic clarity of a surgeon. The parasitic organism, Bianca, had been excised. Now the damaged organ, Nathan, had a chance at survival. "The time for apologies is over, Nathan," I said. "The time for action is now." I had the leverage I needed. The following morning, I orchestrated the final acts of the financial execution. First, the McMansion. I used the cleared lien, the city's criminal fraud investigation, and the overwhelming debt to force a quick, low-cost sale. Nathan, cooperating fully, signed the final deed transfer. The sale proceeds were used to pay off the bank, settle the Land Rover penalties, and pay Hank's $4,500 restocking fee. The money was clean. The asset was liquidated. Second, Bianca's brand. Nathan provided me with every financial document related to her fraudulent consulting business. I forwarded the entire package, including the $40,000 kickback evidence and the theft attempt, to my lawyer. Mr. Vance filed a final, devastating motion for full restitution, freezing her remaining accounts and exposing the business as a shell corporation. Bianca, facing potential criminal charges and total financial ruin, signed the separation and non-disclosure papers. She left the condo, taking only her highly filtered self-image and her remaining designer clothes. She was gone. Third, the reconstruction. I had already purchased a small local art supply business. It was a real business, with a real modest income and a community focus. I offered Nathan the position of general manager. "This is not a vanity project, Nathan," I said, handing him the keys. "This is work. It pays a living wage. It requires focus and dedication. No champagne receptions, no $3,000 handbags, just work." He took the keys, his hand steady for the first time in years. "I can do that, Mother. I promise." I smiled faintly. "I don't want your promise, Nathan. I want your performance." Finally, the children. Maya and Leo were registered for the excellent, safe public school near the condo. They were confused but relieved. They had stability, which they hadn't had in the McMansion. I activated the final, untouchable trust. Their future was secured, clean of their parents' folly. I sat in my library that afternoon, the sun setting over the clean city skyline. The silence was absolute. The surgery was a success. The parasites had been excised. I had paid the ultimate price, the end of the illusion of my perfect family, but I had secured the future of my grandchildren and bought my son a chance at an authentic life. I poured a small, clean glass of single malt scotch. The phone, which had buzzed violently for weeks, was utterly silent. I lifted the glass in a quiet toast to Robert, to the quiet strength it took to let go. I took out my phone. A text message notification appeared on the screen. It was not from the family group chat, which I had permanently archived. It was a private message from Nathan. "Thank you for the space, Mother. I finally understand." I smiled. A genuine private smile. The best revenge, I realized, was not the cold act of cutting, but the quiet, painstaking work of reconstruction. I put the phone down, and I finally allowed myself to enjoy the pure, unassaultable silence of my victory. I was finally, truly alone, and I was finally, truly free. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you are here.